live.
Thank you very much indeed.
We're now live, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. I will start. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching on the live stream of this meeting via the Council's website. Members, you are now aware of the need to keep your video cameras switched on for the duration of the meeting. And if you keep your microphone muted, except when I invite you to speak. I think and obviously are all aware about putting up our right hand, and then I can ask you to bring you in and ask your questions. If there are any risks in respect of technical problems that we occur, I will hopefully seek your patience in this matter. If I need to, I will declare the meeting, as you might say, adjourned for the moment to try to address the fault. If the fault cannot be addressed, it may require us to abandon the meeting for another day, but let's hope not. Can I remind all members and officers that about speaking that this is a virtual meeting and is recorded and will be published on the Council's website. So members, I'd like to begin by calling your names to confirm that you are present at this meeting. So I'll start in alphabetical order. Councillor Connor.
Present.
Councillor Dupre, who is substituting for Councillor Batchelor.
Present.
Councillor Fuller.
Present.
Councillor Howell. Sorry,
Present.
Councillor Hartford.
Present.
Councillor Howell.
Present.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Present.
Councillor King.
Present.
Councillor Manning.
Present.
Councillor Taylor.
Present.
And myself. Can I start the meeting by informing members of the public that item 8 on today's agenda, I'm proposing that this paper is withdrawn to come back to a future meeting of this committee. So I'm now going to go to the item 1, which is apologies. So can I ask Democratic Services to announce the apologies, please? And if any member has a declaration of interest, now is your time to speak about declarations. So Rob? Or
yes, apologies from Councillor Batchelor, and we have the substitute today as Councillor Dupre.
Mark, you have a hand up. Have you a declaration of interest?
Thank you, Chairman. You and I, of course, represent the County Council on ESPO, which is mentioned in agenda item number 5, and I just wish to everybody to know I'm also the chairman of ESPO on behalf of the County Council.
Duly noticed. I see no other member wishing to declare an interest. If in the course of the meeting there is, obviously, please indicate that. I'd like to move now to item 2, which is the minutes of the last meeting. I think Councillor Manning is going to bring us to our attention some words. So Councillor Manning, would you like to actually bring to attention the words that you think perhaps need to be added to the minutes, please?
Sure, Chair. It's quite minor, just that Havenfield is actually spelled Havenfield, not Haydenfield. That's the name of the care home. And I just wanted to have it noted that it was me that brought on page 9, it was me that proposed that the lead members be included as part of the delegation, which you gratefully accepted.
Okay. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a small correction to the minutes regarding public speakers, and we have Ms. Minshall Beach's name spelt incorrectly in one place. Could that be corrected, please, before we sign them off?
Yep, I'm sure we can correct those names. And Councillor Howell.
Only to say that Councillor Harford is trying to get everybody's attention to speak, so that's all it is.
Okay. Councillor Hartford. Okay, Linda.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Vice Chairman, as well. I just wanted to ask, in the minutes, is it really 6 months consultation that's mentioned against agenda item 7? I wasn't at the last meeting, so I can't vote to approve these minutes, but reading through them, is that 6 months or 6 weeks?
Linda, I think, can you remind me what item 7 was, please? And for the rest of the members would be useful.
Oh, sorry, bear
no,
with me. I need to just look at what that was. Sorry, I just got a note.
Chairman, the item 7 is the Cambridge and Peter Road Safety Partnership Strategy.
No, not on this agenda.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
We're on the minutes.
On the minutes.
Chairman, I believe it relates to the ETROs, experimental traffic regulation orders. Is that correct, Councillor Hartford?
Ah, okay.
And I think of it, Richard Lumley can confirm, but the period in which responses are allowed is a 6-month period. I believe that's correct, Richard, which is essentially the consultation period.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to have troubled you with that.
No, it's quite important actually that we get the minutes correct, and Graham Hughes is quite right that this is the over the 6 months people can make comments about the experimental. Amanda Taylor, you've still got your hand up. Are you wishing to speak or not? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry. On that basis, committee members, are you happy to approve those minutes subject to those changes which have already been minuted?
Agreed.
Okay, Amanda, you've still got your hand up. Are you wishing to speak? Okay. Okay, I see no dissent from that. Thank you, Amanda. Okay, so we'll take those as approved. Okay, so if we can move on, please.
Chairman, Councillor King now has his hand up.
Oh, Simon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is in relation to the action log. I just had a point up.
Okay. Okay, well, you're ahead of me.
I thought I'd get in early.
Okay, item 3 is the action log. So let's move to the action log. Simon, obviously, which action are you? Which action are you wishing to draw to our attention?
It was action 160, and I did request if the notes of the meeting that took place in March could be circulated. They still have not been circulated, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm with you, which is the minutes of the Highways and Infrastructure Committee log, minute 146. Okay, and it says on hold. Yeah, no, but in the reference column it says it's on hold. Graham or officers, can you please assist at all in this area?
Yeah, Chairman, through you, I'll pick that up. No, Councillor King, I do apologise. You did ask the question last time, and I did say that I would speak to the service. So leave it with me. Things just got ahead of me, and I didn't follow that through. So apologies, Councillor King, but I will do after this meeting.
That's very, very kind of you, Graham. Much appreciated. It would be very helpful to have them. Thank you.
I've got no other indication of wishing to speak on the action log. So with that, we will move on to the next item, which is King's Dyke. I can see Lee is here. We have no speakers on King's Dyke, and I'll over to Lee, please, to introduce the paper. Lee.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So to introduce the paper to award the contract to White Young Green Consultants. This is in support of the construction phase of the project, obviously absolutely key stage. The NEC contract will be in operation throughout the duration of the scheme, and it's a specialist support to make sure that the construction phase using that NEC form of contract moves swiftly and promptly with a minimum of risk throughout the construction phase. So it is very much part of the process of delivering the scheme. It is already a budgeted item as a point of process actually to bring this matter before you today. as it is a procedural requirement owing to the extent, the monetary value of that. So obviously you've seen the paper. It's absolutely a key part of the scheme and its future successes. Yeah, to highlight that and bring that transparency to this committee.
Thank you, Lee. Simon, you have your hand up. Do you wish to ask a question? Simon King. No.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. I forgot to lower my hand.
No, it's
Yes.
okay. Fine.
Human
Okay.
error. Sorry.
Don't worry. We're all in this new world that we are going through. So I have one hand up, which I think is Ian Manning. So Ian, please ask your question of Lee.
Thanks. I mean, just to make clear, I absolutely support this item, but I just think we need to note, slightly confusing where I read the paper, that it appears we have a consultant who helped us put together the tender for a competitive process, and that same consultant then won that competitive process. So I'm just wondering if Lee could comment on, I mean, normally you have a concept of value engineering in sort of large contracts. Could you just comment on where value engineering comes in this process? Is it part of that awarding process, or does it occur separately?
Okay.
If we've also got Andy Preston on, who may be able to give some assistance here, Ian, if necessary. Okay, but over to you, Lee, to start with, and then I'll bring in Andy if required. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Manning, thank you for that question. It is apologies to have caused any confusion. White Young Green have been involved in the scheme for some time. Actually, they've been our trusted partners. They have helped us let the mainline contract. They've with, of course, recently awarded to Jones Brothers. So they helped us prepare the contract documentation for that. So they've got that long-standing understanding of the scheme background, its sort of legacy and its history. So they were ideally placed for that continuity. And so there was no sort of lead-in time if we were to consider another provider for the NEC role during the scheme. Their appointment was in itself competitively tendered by virtue of the framework contract. So again, there's been a degree of value engineering, to answer your question there. Obviously, they won it in a competitive environment, won that role for us. In terms of value engineering in the wider scale of things, you're absolutely right. With the mainline contract to construct the scheme, there will be a value engineering component to help manage our risks throughout the scheme and to, I guess, mitigate any issues that might arise during the phase. And White Young Green's experience using the NEC contract and all of its various devices within that suite of contract documents will be invaluable. So value engineering has been built in a couple of different areas. Not only with White Young Green's involvement, but also the mainline construction as well.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Mr. Preston, do you wish to add anything to what Lee has said?
No, nothing to add from me, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Ian. Does that answer your question? I think it does, in my view. Okay. Thank you, David. So David Connor has his hand up, as they say. So David, would you like to come in now, please? Thank you. You're still on mute, David. David, you're still on mute. You take your mute off, and Ian, could you take your hand down?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, Chairman.
Please start again, David.
For Kingston, I fully as the local member for Kingston, I fully recommend this proposal. I feel that Lee and his team are doing a really excellent job on this, and I fully commend this proposal to this committee. And I shall support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. We have nobody else wishing to speak. We have a recommendation, which is to award the contract to Whiteley and Green.
Yeah.
I have nobody objecting that I can see, no raised hands objecting to that. So I will take that as unanimous that we are in agreement with the recommendations as laid out on the paper, which is on page 15, by the way. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
That's approved. So if we'd like to move on, please, to the next item.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. Can I just note that one of the public questions has asked a question about whether he's still speaking on the item 8. I suspect he might want to go if he's not able to speak.
No.
Sorry, Ian. On item 8.
So one of the public questions has asked a question.
Yes. I think James or Rob is actually contacting that person to dealt with, Ian. Okay, but thank you for bringing it to our attention. No, we are contacting that person.
Can I just check who is the person, just to make sure it is the person?
Nikki.
Robert Wielden.
Nikki Wielden.
Robert Wielden.
Robert Wielden.
If you look on the chat facility, the question and answers, it's there, Rob.
Okay. Right. Thanks. I wasn't aware of that person asking a question.
Could you be so kind just to reply to them, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. I think there's been a bit of confusion with that name, Ian, by the way, okay, because I've heard several names mentioned who wish to speak on that particular item, but as it's withdrawn, the officers hopefully will contact the person to inform that there is no need for them to speak, but they may wish to speak at another date. So if we'd like to move on, please, now to the next item, which is item 6, which is the Wisbech access strategy. So let me see if I can find that. Here we go. Okay, so I think who's going to start this off? I'm looking for the officer and I can't see his face at the moment. I see Christian. Oh yes, sorry, I do see him now. Okay, apologies, Christian. I couldn't see your face.
Morning.
Okay, good morning to you, and thank you for your attendance. We're on item 6. It starts on page 1 of the thing. So if we'd like to address the paper, please, to members, please proceed. Christian.
Okay. Morning all. We've presented the paper as a on 3 points for recommendation today. The first is by way of an update on the project and the programme and current forecast expenditure by the end of this financial year, by March 21. The second point is on the approval for changing to that growth fund and agreement of that with the combined authority through their business board. And thirdly, given the stage and progress we're currently making on the project, is also now to commit to the procedural position to start compulsory purchase in the background to the negotiation that we're currently running. So on the first point, we are currently we were taking originally 5 projects or 5 sites forward for the scheme, and we are currently coming to the end of detailed design stage for 3 of those, at which point we are negotiating with affected landowners and other interested stakeholders for the sites to develop them. We have put on hold 2 of the sites as part of the strategy because they are linked to Wisbech Rail and another development proposal in the area, which we have paused the development of those to take forward any further until those have been resolved. As part of that, we have had to revise the growth deal funding arrangement with the combined authority, and the proposal as put forward here for recommendation is to reduce the growth fund from 10.5 million to a 6 million fund, which will allow the combined authority to fund other projects whilst providing the additional funding that we require for these 3 sites to be funded from their medium-term financial plan into next year. So that's the second point to feed through as a recommendation for taking forward. And lastly, the third, as I mentioned, is the commitment to commence compulsory purchase as a procedure. We are negotiating on any affected land owners ownership and change of ownership for the 3 projects we're taking forward at the moment, and we are proposing to commence part or the commencement of CPO, which would follow the completion of negotiation if we're not successful with negotiation. We currently program negotiation to complete within August of this year, and we don't currently envisage CPO, but we want to have the procedure running in the background with the early stages. If we do then need to commit ready once we've completed the negotiation phase.
Thank you. Could I just actually draw members to the risks? Okay. I think we've just identified one of the risks, which is about land ownership, and I draw your attention to 2.14 on the report, just to make the point that there are 33 separate parcels of land to be acquired to deliver this project. That's quite a considerable number, and both myself and Mark Howe and local members have been engaged with what I call what those three sites mean. But there is the risk of having 33 separate parcels of land, which is perhaps a little higher than in other circumstances, but it is quite a risk for the particular projects. So members, it is open for discussion and debate. I'm looking to see if there's anybody with their hands up. Thank you. I was expecting that, Simon. Thank you. So Simon King.
Well, this is my opportunity to be parochial, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad that things do seem to be moving. You can see from the description of the timescale in the report, this has been going on a long time. I do think that there's a general point about us learning to be more nimble with large projects. And we always seem to get trapped into this endless delay. And with this particular one, the way I read the report is that we're going to lose part of the LGF grant. Now, I know we're getting the money, this is the way I read the report, we seem to be getting the money from elsewhere, but could Christian clarify whether that LGF grant is going to be lost because of the timescale? That's my first question.
Okay, Simon, I've got Noel Kavanagh. So what I'll do is I'll ask Noel to ask his question and then ask Christian to come back with. Okay, so Noel, if you'd like to ask your question at this particular point, would be much appreciated.
Thanks. Yeah. On bottom of page 8, 4.7, under public health implications, if you can see that, there's a clear statement there referencing walking and cycling, and the statement saying that when it comes to detailed design, walking and cycling will be taken into account. I just would like an assurance that walking and cycling will be taken very seriously, because in many ways I would have thought that the planning of cycling routes in particular should be considered very early on. And I'm just wondering whether the county cycling project team have been involved in looking at provision of cycle routes in these schemes. And another question is, I suppose it's for Christian maybe, is does Wisbech have a kind of cycling lobbying group, as Ely has, and as we know, Cambridge has? So that's the question.
Okay, thank you, Noel.
Thanks.
Okay, so Christian, can you deal with those two questions? I think that start with Simon King's first, please, and then move on to Noel's question.
Of course. Yes. So the challenge around the original growth funding was the spend by March 21 of the £10.5 million budget for the five projects. We proposed the reduction from 10.5 to 6 million as the amount that we could envisage being spent by that period of time, but also on the reduction in the number of sites that was originally on. The 10.5 million was also for the commitment of the five sites to be delivered. So we reduced the financial commitment in line with the financial period left for that growth deal funding to be spent by, but also by the reduction of 2 sites as well, which is then, as I said, has then been supplemented by the medium-term financial plan from the Combined Authority to fill the shortfall as such in that spend that we would go into next financial year and beyond the funding period. And that, so as we understand it, the 4.5 million that's then been returned is then to be signed off by Combined Authority Business Board to be spent on other projects within the Combined Authorities region. On the second point on the cycling, the project did consider the cycle infrastructure for the area. There is a very good national cycle route network location nearby. We consulted through prelim design last year on the requirements for current cycling provision with the Cambridgeshire cycling team. And although there is no direct sort of lobbying group as such for the cycling team provision in Wisbech as you would have in Cambridgeshire and Ely, there is we have had heavy involvement through the steering group with the local members to relay that, and we've been through quite recently the latest update on the position on cycling and the future for that. So I think although obviously the nature of things have changed recently in the timescale of our project, we'd reviewed it before the changes brought in through the recent additional central government funding that's been given, but we had given suitable provision for the level of need and demand that was currently envisaged, plus some additional capacity to allow for the future development around some of these locations in Wisbech.
Thank you, Simon King. You've got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do, yes. And the short answer to that, Christian, is yes, we did lose the money. And thank you and well done for identifying the source of some replacement funding. But I think, that is a huge lesson for us, that we need to be more nimble-footed in delivering these infrastructure things. Now, the second thing I'm going to raise, which Ian is going to put his head in his hands over, is if you look at the members of the steering group, you will see that there are 3 county councillors for Wisbech, and the only one that isn't on the steering group is me. And I have requested repeatedly that I be put on the steering group, and I am presented with what I would say are bureaucratic arguments for reasons why I can't. Now, I would suggest that the members of the existing steering group would be quite happy for me to join it, because if you look at the part of the report, there are no less than 700 houses that are scheduled to be constructed within my division. So I'm going to just yet again formally request of officers and you, Mr. Chairman, that you find a way to put me on the steering group, please. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Simon. I think what I will do in answer to your question is I will take that away. I will discuss that with the appropriate officers, which I think will be Kristen and Andy Preston, and come back to you on that particular matter. Can I just draw members' attention to the committee tomorrow, the Combined Authorities Transport Committee, and there is a report on there about Wisbech Rail. Okay, so for members that connected with this is essentially for you, Simon, really. Okay, I hope you've seen the report. It is there. I will be attending tomorrow. Okay, and I think I might even repeat myself a little bit, so apologies for those that listen tomorrow, because with 33 landowners issues, there is a bit of a risk there, to say the least. So I will be there tomorrow and we'll be talking, but you're most welcome to look at it's all on the Combined Authorities website. I've got no other indication of anybody wishing to speak, We've got A, B, and C. The first is to note the project development to date. The second is to agree the request for the money through the Combined Authorities Business Board, and the third recommendation is to commence compulsory purchase. In due course. So I'm looking to see if there's anybody objecting to those recommendations. I see no hands up at all. I will therefore make the assumption that we're all in favour, and therefore that is a unanimous decision to accept the recommendations on that particular item. So if we can, thank you indeed. Can we move on please now to Cambridge and Peterborough Road Safety Partnership, please. I think that's Matt Stainton. Apologies, I look on the other, trying to find it. So Matt, let me see. Yes, I see you. Yes, I see you in the corner. Okay, thank you. So please introduce the paper as written, and thank you very much indeed for preparing it. Is much appreciated. It is a very good report and a very good piece of work, please. So please introduce it.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, this is an item about the next road safety strategy for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough partnership. The previous strategy ran from 2015 to 2020. So this is a new strategy that is required for the next period moving forwards. The strategy adopts Vision Zero using the internationally recommended safe systems approach, and renames the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Road Safety Partnership as the Vision Zero Partnership. And with your permission, Chair, I'd like to introduce Vision Zero with a short video, if the technology allows, and you're happy for me to do that.
Very content, thank you. Best of luck.
Let's give it a go. Can I just check you can all see my screen now?
Yes, I can.
Hopefully it allows me to
Yes,
play.
I can.
Yes, so can I.
Looks like you're on play.
So last year, 213 people died on our roads. What do you think would be a more acceptable number?
Acceptable? 70 maybe? Probably 70.
Can you sound 70? Actually, this is what 70 people looks like. So now, what do you think would be a more acceptable number?
0. 0.
So hopefully that explained the Vision Zero element of the partnership strategy. That video was taken from Australia. Apologies.
I just wanted to ask you a few questions about road safety.
This is where the technology doesn't work, isn't it?
Last year,
There you go.
We all need some patience at these times.
Thank you very much.
We will be patient. Please proceed, Matt.
Thank you very much for your patience with me today. So yeah, that obviously that video was taken from Australia, but the concept is identical here, and really that 0 is the only acceptable number we can set as a vision to work towards. The partnership does set interim targets to 2030, but with the overall vision for 2040, working towards 0 fatal casualties and severe injuries on Cambridgeshire and Peterborough's roads.
Okay, have you finished, Matt?
Yes.
Okay, I've got one. So it's open for discussion and debate, members, starting with Linda and then Lorna. So thank you, Linda. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And can I echo your thanks to Matt Stainton for the excellent report and the very powerful video. So I read this with real excitement, and I made a list of the things that I really like about the strategy. So first of all, it's ambition. Without ambition, we're nowhere. It's synergies with other council priorities. That was excellent. When I started to read the covering report, my first thought was about the synergy that this has with our zero carbon by 2050 ambition. It endorses my own long-held views that we have to change behaviour, but that we have to have the appropriate package of carrots and sticks to achieve it. And also, this has to be the right time to embark on this. This is the time when communities have really pulled together and are actually feeling good about their ability to work as a community. So then I thought about you know, what my concerns might be, and top of the list again was its ambition, and that is a bit of a gain and a risk and an opportunity, isn't it? I think that we have to be really, really careful that we bring communities with us and they really feel empowered to be a part of this, because there is a tendency amongst some communities to talk about the ploys that various authorities have to get them to do more of the work that they currently believe they pay their council tax for. So I think that's just a bit of a risk, and we need to be really, really careful. I am concerned too that it will create another form of postcode lottery, because my experience is that not all parish councils are keen to take on more responsibilities and assume leadership. So we'll need to look really carefully as we're engaging the community, whether or not it's the parish council for that particular community that is the right leadership vehicle, or whether there are other small groups that would be better placed to do that. And also, I'm just slightly concerned about the expectation that's created that funding will be available to keep pace with the work that will inevitably need to be done, or that there might be a feeling that the council is trying to do things on the cheap. So I absolutely applaud this strategy. I think it's absolutely fabulous. I want to see it work. But I have to raise those few critical issues so that we give it the best opportunity to succeed, because the value of this just cannot be overestimated.
Thank you, Linda. I've got the next speaker is Lorna. So Lorna, and welcome to your first meeting here with this committee. So over to you, Lorna.
Thank you very much. I want to start by absolutely paying tribute to the hard work and dedication that I know that Matt puts into his role here, and the utter commitment he has to road safety. And I wish I could be as optimistic as Councillor Harford about this, but I'm concerned on a number of fronts. The first front I'm concerned about is that the last road safety strategy, the one that this replaces, the one that has just completed, set out to be ambitious. It set out to reduce by 40% the numbers of people killed and seriously injured on our roads. And that failed. It failed dismally. Less than half of that was achieved. And I don't say that in order to cast blame at anybody in this. That's not what this is about. What it's about is that I'm concerned that this strategy doesn't actually start from a position of thoroughly evaluating publicly, transparently and openly why that didn't work and what we are going to do to ensure that what we are proposing here does work. And I really don't think that that is starting out with a negative cast of mind. I think it's actually learning from prior experience is a really positive thing to do. And I do wish that we had actually started from a more transparent place on this, because I think that I would have a lot more confidence in the likelihood of success of what is being proposed here. And it grieves me to say that, but I do think it's important, and I really think it's important that we acknowledge where things have not worked and instill prior learning into every aspect of what we do. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say, Councillor Harford mentioned parishes, and I think my experience over the last, 4 years as a member of this authority is the number of occasions on which parishes come to me or copy me into emails to members to members of our officer corps, or comment on consultations and say, can you please help us solve this real daily road safety issue? I'm thinking particularly of the parishes that I represent that sit along the A142 and the problems that there are with road safety and ingress and egress at all of those junctions along the A142, and the number of times parishes are asking, begging, pleading for help to make those junctions safer, and the answer always comes back that for whatever reason, which may well be a good reason, it can't be done. And I think I'm very worried about anything that seems to put parishes in the forefront of this fight when they know that daily they are trying to articulate their residents' concerns and are being told that nothing can be done. My third point is allied to that, which is about resourcing. And again, I'm going to be very local, and I'm going to talk about my division and the stretch of it along the A142. And I have discussed this recently with Matt, the safety study that was done of the A142 between Ely and Chatteris. And that was a really helpful, good piece of work. It was allied to a piece of work on the south of the East Cambs district. And it was really useful in flagging up all the issues, all the things that could be done and needed to be done to improve that stretch of road and make it safer. It wasn't there weren't specific accident clusters along it at that time, but it was known to be a road that was not safe. And that piece of work threw up over £5 million worth of work that needed to be done to implement the findings of that road safety study. The trouble is that, and I know Matt has put huge effort into finding resources from all over the place to try and put them into place to implement the findings of the study, but we are looking at years, I think, ahead before we will be able to fully implement all of the findings from that study. I know some work has been done, some is in the pipeline, but we are a long way off that whole 5 million plus package of works. And unless we can find ways to remedy the road safety issues that we identify, then a strategy is always going to be starting off with at least one hand tied behind its back and probably both feet tied together. So those are my very real concerns about this. And I certainly don't wish to oppose it, but I feel uncomfortable supporting something where I know that there are so many issues to begin with. And I really want to support the work of officers in addressing this as an issue. But I want to see the council as a whole corporately get behind this and address the very real structural issues that have stopped the previous strategies working and may indeed impede this one. And that would be very grievous to see that happen.
Okay, thank you, Lorna. I'm going to bring in Simon King now and then ask, I think, Matt, because we've got a few other speakers, so I'll split it in two. So Simon, if you'd like to speak now, and then I will ask Matt to come back in and then address the other three speakers after that. So Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just want to congratulate Matt on a huge amount of work that's gone into this, and I think there's a lot of good things in here. I have three specific questions. One is relating to the numbers of KSIs. There was a lot of uncertainty because the way that the figures were collected changed. Are we confident that we've got to a point where the figures are now accurate? That's the first question. Secondly, has a similar strategy been adopted anywhere else in the world? And do we have any information about its success or otherwise? Because I think that would be a very strong argument in getting people to buy into it. And the third question is, has any thought been given to changing what we identify as a serious injury? Because I think a much more helpful idea is to use the expression life-changing injury, because those are the injuries that really impact most upon people's lives. So those are the three questions. And the final sort of comment is, I was really surprised to see no mention of insurance and insurance companies in the report. So those were the three questions and a comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So, Matt, can you start with hopefully some answers and some reassurance, I think. Thank you.
I think I've got all of them down, so apologies if I do misaddress any of those comments. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to the councillors for their kind comments about the work that's involved in this, but also to say that the work predominantly isn't mine. There's been an awful lot of work been undertaken by other people involved in pulling this together, particularly Agilisis and Traject, who have done some of the legwork with the partners and the rest of the partnership as well, in terms of the effort that they've put in. So I need to make sure that is acknowledged as well. First of all, yes, in terms of the ambition behind the strategy, I think we wanted to be ambitious with this and reflect, following on from the video, why that's important to have that as our end goal. With the work with communities, I think we've made a very important recognition around the Think Communities approach, that we need to trial how that works in terms of the road safety landscape to make sure that we get it right, and the essence of the approach is very much individualized to each community rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, and that's what we're looking to try and adopt. So it isn't just using the same mechanism with everybody, and looking at how we build up experience in that field, which I know is being developed in other areas of the council's activity as well. In terms of the funding and resourcing side of things, yes, we recognise that the current funding that we have through the ITB block funding is small for road safety, but having a strategy such as this opens up opportunities with the likes of the DFT in terms of future funding bids. Certainly the experience we've had with the A1303 scheme, where we were able to access funding for this type of approach on the A1303 and access £1.3 million from DFT to operate in this way, is evidence that this kind of approach is what the Department for Transport are looking for, and therefore having this strategy is only going to reinforce our future funding bids to them for any of this type of work. So I see this as a real supporting mechanism for the way that we can fund these type of activities in future. To pick up both Councillor Dupre and Councillor King's questions about the data and the statistics. First of all, yes, the Agilisis did some work picking up from the Office of National Statistics work that was done on the correction factors that needed to be put in based on the reporting changes. And as part of the new strategy, we have used corrected figures in terms of setting new targets and things like that. And just to pick up on Councillor Dupre's point about the previous strategy, the targets that were set have been adjusted as part of that, using that piece of work. So actually between the 2004 to 8 baseline and last year's figures, we saw a 31% reduction in killed or seriously injured casualties. Haven't hit the 40% target. Apologies for the background noise. Haven't hit the 40% target, which we recognise, and as part of the development work, I know we've had this conversation before, Councillor Dupre, but we have gone through looking at some lessons learned and how that's fed into the strategy, and a lot of that is embedded into the approach that's been put forward for the strategy document. So picking that one up, for the in terms of other places that have adopted this approach, the Australia have adopted Vision Zero. Sweden and the Netherlands have adopted the Safe Systems approach, which is the approach that this is based on. Sweden started that in the early 90s and have seen massive improvements in road safety as a result of adopting that nationally. The same for the Netherlands, and really those two, in terms of European and globally, have been world leaders in taking this forward. Australia is probably the latest country, as well as New Zealand, that have adopted it in the last 5 to 10 years, and they've started seeing key benefits in taking that approach forward. And yet this is where the World Health Organization push on using this approach has come from and is embedded. Finally, just picking up on Councillor King's queries about the serious injury issue and what we class as a serious injury. It's exactly the conversation that we've had as part of the research work that's gone on in the last strategy. We have just come to the end of finalising the end of a project with Addenbrooke's around the using injury data better and using that to identify culpable drivers in collisions that cause trauma. And the intention is that we're going to put on a members seminar in the autumn to update on the results of that work, so that you can be informed on that. And insurance companies, what we're building into the strategy and the work streams that we've got is to pull in additional partners, additional organisations according to the work that's going on. So that's where we would see in this structure of the partnership how that would fit in.
Thank you, Matt. I've got 4 more speakers. I'd ask all members just to try not to repeat something that has already been asked. So the next speaker is Ian Manning. So over to you, Ian, please.
Thanks, Chair. In the interest of that, I won't repeat. I'll just say that I agree with Councillor Dupre's comments about the sort of the past work. I think it was lovely to see, from my personal perspective, I won't gush over the report too much, but it was lovely to see academic references in the report. I very much appreciated that. I'm glad that you mentioned Addenbrooke's. I think it's worth noting that I found out recently that A&E doesn't actually record whether a collision is with the cyclist or not, which I found was an interesting a lack of detail, and I'm pleased to say there's some work that's gone on with Addenbrooke's to improve, well, the NHS to improve stats. Could you maybe comment on 2 things specifically? One, how, thinking of this Think Communities approach, how the pilot areas will be selected. I know there's bits of my division that will be very interested in that sort of ground up approach. And the fact that there's no mention of kind of modal shift as part of this strategy. Clearly, if you have less people driving, there will probably be less accidents. I mean, the reverse could be true. You could end up with more people speeding, but I would like to see something in there. And so, I just finished by saying that I'm kind of in the same boat as Councillor Dupre. I don't want to oppose this, but I don't feel I can wholeheartedly support it.
Okay, thank you, Ian. I'll take all the speakers, Matt, first before I ask you to come back in, and so the next speaker is Mark Howell.
Thank you, Chairman. I thought I was after Councillor Kavanagh. Chairman, thank you very much indeed for this, Matt. It is really appreciated, very, very powerful and hard-hitting, the clip that you showed us, very much so. Just 2 things I want to highlight, and which is in the report. I think it's, you've got a very, very tough job there. You say on page 35 how it's people's mistakes, and how very often most of these acts are mistakes that are made. And that is what we've got to try and go against, and we're trying to get people to make less and less mistakes. One mistake that we can make people stop is on page 56, and that is to completely decrease the percentage of car drivers consuming drugs and alcohol. And I do believe that until the alcohol level is 0, so that you cannot have a drink, any drink whatsoever, before you can drive. And I think that is one of the principal things we have to be looking at and have to be working towards as a county, and hopefully nationally. Then we will always have car accidents, not only for the driver, but the people that they kill as well. So I hope that we can look in the future at putting something together where it's 0 tolerance on alcohol in the bloodstream when people are driving. Thank you, Chairman. Good report.
Thank you. Thank you. Noel Kavanagh, you're next.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Very good, clear report. I imagine you did a great deal of research, to feed into the content of your report. And I'd be interested to know what your view is, which not necessarily an official county view is, but of the notion of presumed liability. That is where, when there's an accident between usually motorists and a cyclist, most countries in the world, I suppose, apart from the UK, Ireland and Malta, this rule of presumed liability where the motorist is automatically at fault and is liable to pay compensation. Whether you think that would be a good act to bring in to the UK, and whether, if the county council thinks it's something that should be seriously taken, whether the county council might look into lobbying central government on this very important aspect of road safety. It seems to work on the continent in particular, and it's just a shame that national governments haven't taken it seriously here in the UK. The second thing I'd just like to raise is, I suppose it's another stick approach to this, but across the city, Cambridge, and also market towns, we've got the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, which was brought in after a great deal of discussion. There's been a huge investment of county money in signage and road markings to remind people that they are driving through 20-mile-an-hour zones, and as we know, speed kills. There's a national campaign called 20 is Plenty. But I think what many residents communicate to me is the frustrations at the lack of enforcement by the police. And when we have raised it with the police, they're about enforcing the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, for its main reason being safety, reduce accidents. In fact, the answer is usually they haven't got the resources. So it would be interesting to know if it is possible to put pressure on the police to actually take the 20 is Plenty seriously. They're obviously a key partner in this strategy, and I urge you to pursue that line. Thanks.
Thank you, Noel. The last speaker I've got is Linda Hartford. So, Linda, please come.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for letting me come back. I was rather remiss when I spoke, because I actually agree with Councillor Dupre about the impact of HGVs. I was really pleased to hear Matt Staton say that he will effectively look to co-opt other stakeholders like those involved in the insurance industry. I wondered, would it be appropriate to include the Road Haulage Association and the Freight Transport Association? I know when I've had particular issues with HGVs in my division, certainly the Road Haulage Association has been incredibly supportive and collaborative. So I just wonder if they would be two possible considerations for inclusion in the list of possible stakeholders to be co-opted.
Thank you, Linda. Matt, over to you. There's quite a few questions there, so hopefully you've got a note of them somewhere. So hopefully you'll be able to address some of them, maybe not all of them, but please proceed.
Hopefully I'm keeping track, Chair. Thank you.
Good.
So in terms of Councillor Manning's questions around how the pilot areas are being selected for Think Communities, there are a couple of areas that have been already engaged with us on work where they're looking to take a lead on activity locally, and I think we would be looking to to trial the approach with those willing participants in the first instance to get an understanding of how it works. Obviously, across the council, there is experience with communities already engaged in this approach, and it would also be it makes sense to us to utilise those links that are already there around communities that are already engaged and partners who are already engaged in those communities as well. But as that builds over the next couple of years, we would then expect it to be embedded more widely in how the delivery takes place. So it's kind of an iterative part of the strategy as we move forward into the first review period. In terms of modal shift, I think the strategy itself is focused specifically on the safety side of things, but I think it is within that it is very important to the council where Councillor Harford mentioned about how this has a synergy with other strategies that the council and the combined authority have put forward already. Therefore, that link is really essential, and it's not a case of that's being ignored. It's about how that works together, and the other strategies are firmly on top of that rather than duplicating that work. It's about working together on that. In terms of Councillor Cowell and Councillor Kavanagh's questions about both drink driving and presumed liability, I think one of the things that is mentioned in the strategy document itself is a role that the partnership can play in advocacy, and that really is part of the change in approach and the formal coordination of how the strategy develops and how the strategy has been put forward. So actually, as a leader nationally on this piece, we would have an advocacy role back to national government on these kind of issues in terms of putting the local perspective, but also our expertise in terms of the research and how that can be fed into national policy as well. So I see this strategy really cements that as an opportunity for us to start feeding back to a national level with a more robust framework behind us. In terms of the enforcement question raised by Councillor Kavanagh, I think what's really important to recognise with the strategy is this is a partnership. This is not about each of us operating in silos. This is about all of us working together to tackle these issues. It's not our problem or the police's problem or the fire service problem or the NHS's problem in terms of road safety. It is a collective partnership problem that we need to resolve. So therefore, that is the approach that we would be looking to take with these kind of issues, is how do we encourage lower speeds in those environments collectively, not individually. And that's a really important development and part of that formal coordination that this new strategy embeds as part of the partnership work. And finally, to come back to Councillor Harford's question about the hauliers, absolutely in the same way that we talked about insurance companies and picking up on that point about the formal coordination, the work streams are going to look at who the most appropriate partners are to bring in, whether that's external or current partners to the partnership. And depending on the activity that needs to be undertaken, the onus would be on the work stream leads to engage whoever the relevant people are.
Indulge me with a few comments, please, members. I'm sure on behalf of all of us, we'll ask.
Chairman, if I just come in, you are extremely quiet, which is unlike you.
Yeah, that's because
that's better, Chairman.
That's better. It's useful if you put down your speaker arm. Okay, so on behalf of all of us, I think it would be useful if, Matt, you could please convey our thanks to all the people that have been involved in setting this strategy and compliment on their work. Two, I think it came home to me when reading the recommendation C, note the leadership role. And just for members, I intend to take that leadership role forward because it's absolutely vital. For those that don't know, I spent most of my working life at Addenbrooke's. I'm surprised, Ian Manning, that they don't record cycling, but that's for perhaps another day. Matt's quite... Sorry? Say again, Ian?
It's a very specific case, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. Road traffic accidents in all of its forms do affect communities, individuals, families, relatives, etc., and is enormously important for everybody. So the next suggestion I'm going to, I'll come to the recommendations as they're laid out on the paper, is to ask Matt, please, to circulate this paper to districts, towns, parishes, and all interested parties. And I think the list will be quite long: insurance companies, HGVs, haulages, etc. So perhaps, Matt, you could work up a list, as you might say, so that we can actually inform this, because it is about some partnership issues and it's involving the communities, because a lot of the communities actually can take a lot of actions themselves, individual parents taking children to school, etc., etc. So I think a wide circulation would be useful at this particular point, would be extremely useful. I've got no other comments except one question. I noticed in the report it talks about the Addenbrooks being the point because of its major trauma centre, which I'm fully aware of, having worked there. Where does Peterborough and Hinchinbrook fit into that discussion? Because a lot of road safety issues will go from the north of the county, will be going to Peterborough Hospital or to Hinchinbrook, what I call it as well. So I'm not clear from what I've read, Matt, and I'm happy to take it offline, as you might say. You don't have to give me an answer today. How do they figure into the recording of what is serious? Because they receive a lot of patients in those two hospitals for the road traffic accidents within the county and further afield, of course. So I'm happy for you to take that offline, Matt. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I think, members, is go to the recommendations, which are A, B, C, and D. That is to confirm the continued commitment to the Road Safety Partnership, to adopt the zero tolerance strategy and the vision within that. Interesting to see, if you like, other countries are doing just that. Note the leadership role. I think I've mentioned that already, and to do some delegation to the Assistant Director of Highways in conjunction with myself and Mark in respect of making any further decisions. So, members, I'm looking to see if there's any hands raised that disagrees with those 4 recommendations. No, I see no hands raised. So, Lorna, you wish to say something on before I go to a vote?
Sorry, Chair, I was going to say that Councillor Manning, who is my lead member on this, was actually raising his physical hand rather than his virtual hand, and it was to draw your attention to the fact that Councillor Manning wished to speak.
Okay, thank you. No, I didn't. I'm looking for blue hands, not raised hands, as they say.
Apologies.
Ian, please speak.
Just to go back, I think, I don't want to oppose this strategy, but I do have enough of an issue with recommendation B to say that I'd like to abstain, please.
You're most welcome. Would you like them members, please, if you're going to do that? I'll take them. I'll take A, C, and D together, and take B separately. Is that okay? So can we please then, I suspect, have to read your names out to get which ones you are approving, please. So members, if we go then to A, C, and D, all those in favour of A, C, and D, I will perhaps read your names out. So apologies while I scrab around and find all your names in order. So Councillor Connor, are you in favour of A?
Yes.
Apologies while I found Councillor Dupre.
I'm in favour of A, B, C, and D.
Yeah, I'll come back to D in a minute. Okay, I'm looking at A, C, and D at the moment. So Councillor Connor, all those in favour of A, C, and D, please indicate. Councillor Connor. I think that was an agreement. Councillor Dupre?
Yes.
Councillor Dupre?
In favour, yes, support.
Yep. Councillor Fuller?
4.
Councillor Hartford?
4.
Howell? Councillor Howell?
4.
Councillor Kavanagh?
Support. Yeah.
Councillor King?
Support.
Councillor Manning?
Support.
Councillor Taylor?
Support.
And myself, support. Members, can I now deal with the recommendation, which is at B? I will read out the names again and ask for your vote on item D. Councillor Connor.
Support.
Councillor Dupre.
Abstain.
Councillor Fuller,
For.
Councillor Hartford,
For.
Councillor Howell,
For.
Councillor Kavanagh,
Support.
Councillor King,
Support.
Councillor Manning,
Abstain.
Councillor Taylor,
Abstain.
and myself in favour. Thank you, members. We've had duly had the vote. I don't think there's any. Ian, you got your hand up still. Are you wishing to say anything more? Well, you finished? Ian Manning.
I've taken it down, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, so excuse me. If we'd like to move on, please, to the next item on the thing, which is item 8, has obviously been withdrawn. We move to item 9, which is South Cambridgeshire Cycle Improvement Plan.
Chair, could I raise a point of order, please? I did have my hand raised.
Oh, sorry, you took it down. So yes, Lorna.
It was just to ask, I believe it's usual to say for the record what the outcome of the vote was, and I wondered whether we should be asking the officers to do that.
I'll take some advice.
Happy to do that, Chairman. The first vote on A, C and D was unanimous, all 10. On the second vote on B, that was 7 in favour and 3 abstentions.
Okay. Thank you. So if we'd like to move on to the next item, which is South Cam cycling improvements, and I think it's going to be Grant Weller that is going to introduce this. We have got 4 speakers. I'm going to invite Grant Weller, please, to introduce the paper first, then take the public questions, and then open it up for members after that time. So Grant, please introduce the paper.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. Back in 2014, a programme of pedestrian and cycle improvements was proposed for the South Cambs area funded through Section 106 monies. These included Queen Edith Way, Cherry Hinton Road and the Robin Hood Junction. These schemes were approved at the E&E Committee in October 2014. Following public consultations between 2014 and 2016, the E&E Committee approved the implementation of a Dutch roundabout at Fendham Road in November 2016. With additional funding from the DFT, the budget for Queen Edith Way and Fendham Road then stood at 2.056 million. Work commenced on Fendham Road in September 2019 and was due to be completed in April 2020. The estimated cost prior to construction starting was 1.5 million. This formed part of an overall programme of developer contributions of £4 million rather than a county council budget. There have been 2 major issues since commencement, namely the additional utility works and the shutdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Both of these have had an impact on programme and budget. There were major challenges around locating underground utilities and the risks associated with this. But these challenges were dealt with in a very effective manner and reduced the impact that they would have done had they been done in advance. The costs associated around COVID-19 were to do with the demobilisation and remobilisation of the workforce, the maintaining of the traffic management on site and the various site facilities, and also the impact of productivity caused by social distancing. The budget now required to complete the scheme is 2.35 million. The Robin Hood Junction is due to start in January and is recommended to proceed given the development to date. Overall, this will impact the rest of the programme, leaving approximately 700,000. In recognition that this area is strategically important, bearing in mind the Cambridge Biomedical Campus, it's imperative that we explore further funding, whether it be from other Section 106 funds or other bodies, including GCP or the Combined Authority. The committee is recommended, therefore, to note the issues that have been experienced on the project and their impact, and to approve the £304,000 reallocation of budget from within the overall programme to complete the construction of the roundabout.
Okay, finished, Grant. Okay, thank you. I'm now going to invite the members of the public who've asked to address the committee. And I'm going to ask, the first speaker is Dr. Ghosh. Hopefully he will come on to the video link. Rob or James, is Dr. Ghosh? Yes, I see his name. So welcome, Dr. Ghosh. Please unmute your link and please ask your question. Thank you very much indeed.
Hello, it's a female, it's not a male.
Oh, apologies.
Okay. Okay. First of all, thank you, Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to ask this question. I am a civil engineer and a geotechnical engineer and a technical director. So this is roundabouts are my bread and butter. And I have local residents in Nightingale Avenue. So I have closely followed this project from the inception. And my question is really just trying to reflect on what Grant has just mentioned, that the cost of this roundabout which gives priority to cyclists and pedestrians, has risen from an estimated £8,000 to 2.3 million. I am quoting this from the recent BBC News article, which was published on the 2nd of July. And since this is significantly over budget and delayed program, my question to this committee is really, what are the lessons learned by the committee? And not only that, but how will this lesson be embedded in assessing future bids and programs? I noted earlier somebody mentioned about the committee need to be nimble-footed. So I wonder, what are your thoughts on that? And essentially the vital question, as you must be aware, local residents are not really wholeheartedly in favor of this scheme. And we've all really suffered months of disruption in our daily life. So essentially, what are the selected parameters for assessing the success and effectiveness of this scheme? I would welcome the thoughts of the committee on this. And as I said, I'm not speaking on this as a layman, but I'm speaking as someone who has years of experience on this. Thank you very much for your attention.
And thank you indeed for the question. I'm going to take all the other questions in order and then ask the officers to address some of those questions. So the next speaker is Cambridge City Councillor Colin McGrath. So Colin, welcome. Just wait for you to appear on the video link. And yes, there we are. We can see you. So please unmute, Colin, and please ask your question.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Grant for bringing this report to the committee, and also thank Councillor Taylor for requesting the report and insisting that it come to this public forum. I don't propose to comment on the delays caused by COVID-19, except to express my sincere thanks to everyone working on the project. And I'm sure we all agree that the safety of council staff and their families is of paramount importance. I have enormous sympathy for the people delivering this incredibly complex project and pioneering project. I really do. The Queen Edith's Liberal Democrat team have been campaigning for pedestrian and crossings and cycle safety routes at this roundabout since before I was elected. And my current and former colleagues are really excited to see it finally come to fruition. Now, earlier this year, when it became clear that the project would be delivering late, I spent a long time talking to my namesake, Colin, the project manager at the Fendon Road roundabout site, looking at the available plans to understand the complex water, gas, electrical and data cables underground. And there were actually, that's just the ones actually marked on the map. Even while we stood there, a gas pipe was discovered that was 3 meters away from where it was supposed to be. And that caused significant delays even on that day. And I'm all too familiar with the frustration of managing a project which slips behind due to third-party suppliers where we have little or no control. In this case, BT Openreach were a key partner, and the complex aspects of the project that they would deliver will provide benefits later on during the rollout of the next generation of broadband. But these might not be so keenly felt locally, although other parts of the city are indeed suffering significant works related to fibre optic cable installation. Hello, Chair. I'm sorry, I noticed my video wasn't on as I glanced across there. So
no, we can now all see you, Colin. Please continue.
Chair, I do have a great deal of sympathy for those delivering this complex project, but ultimately my greatest sympathies lie with the public. This is a pioneering project and we've asked people for their forbearance. And on the whole, people have been fantastically tolerant and helpful. But I can't help remembering that there were similar explanations for delays delivering cycle lanes on Hills Road, and that certain underground works could not have been known about in advance. So I'm asking this committee today to begin a process by which we can use this experience in a positive way to improve our estimates of project timescales and cost, and if possible, minimize such overruns in the future. This isn't the last active transport project I'd like us to be promoting, Chair, as we strive for a future with safer roads, cleaner air and less congestion, so that those who actually need to drive have space to do so, and those who would walk or cycle if it were a bit safer have that option. I hope the committee will accept this request in the collaborative spirit in which it's made, and I thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Colin, for your input. The next speaker, I think, is going to say name's gone out of my head. Sorry,
Councillor Rosie Moore, I think is.
Thank you, Rosie Moore. Apologies, Rosie. Rosie, I don't see you, but we'll wait for you. Yes, thank you. If you could unmute Rosie and put your video camera on, we much appreciated.
Thank you. Sometimes my Wi-Fi is not very good, so do let me know if you can't hear me and I'll stop the video.
You're coming through quite clearly at the moment.
Excellent. Well, first I should just congratulate Councillor Bates and Andy Preston on their background wall map, as we all seem to be matching. I'm here to ask you to reconsider your plans to remove the £304,000 from the scheme to make Cherry Hinton Road safer for cyclists and pedestrians, and to look and find the additional funds needed for the Fendham Road roundabout from other sources. I'm a ward councillor for Coleridge Ward. This Cherry Hinton Road is a very busy road, and this scheme is vitally needed, and that's why it's a really popular scheme with residents. Residents really want these improvements to Cherry Hinton Road, and they have already responded to the consultation on the proposed designs. This scheme, as has been said, has been planned for years because cycling improvements are desperately needed along Cherry Hinton Road, even before COVID was ever imagined. It's a very busy road. It's a commuter route into and out of the city. Plus there are lots of schools off of Cherry Hinton Road. So a lot of children and young people use Cherry Hinton Road as part of their journey to and from home. I'm not 100% sure, but I would suggest that this could have the densest number of schools, colleges and nurseries in the whole of the city. So making this safer for young people, I would say, is vital. Now with the new restrictions on Mill Road Bridge, some of that traffic is going to be moved from that used to go along Mill Road. It will now be travelling along Cherry Hinton Road. So we needed this scheme before. It's been consulted on, residents want it, and in fact we're going to need it even more in the future. So residents want this scheme, and I would ask you to reconsider your plans to remove the funds from this scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. All please stay on the line for the discussion. Okay, so the next speaker I've got is Mark Lawrence Jones, so I'll just wait to see him appear. I do. So good morning, Mark. If you could unmute, Mark, and put your video camera on, it would be extremely useful. So welcome, Mark. Here we
Good
are.
morning,
Yeah.
Chair. Can you see me
Good
now?
morning. Yes, we can see you now. Thank you much indeed, and thank you for your joining the committee, and please ask your question.
Good morning. Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a local resident who enjoys cycling, and I live close to the roundabout. And I also have a background in engineering. So over the years, I've been very keen to understand the details of the project. The chair and several other members may recall a presentation that I made in Shire Hall in late 2018, when residents suggested that the business case should be much better defined. I've consistently found it difficult to get data about the proposed design, both on the budget and on the benefits. Now, clearly the cost in the roundabout has risen from 0.8 million to now 2.35 million. And of course, it had already doubled by September 2019 before any work began and before any unexpected cabling could be discovered. In terms of the benefits, the project was justified on the basis of safety to residents and the Department of Transport. We know that accidents to cyclists do occur on similar roundabouts, so understanding if there's any gain in safety, and if so, how much, is an essential part of the cost-benefit business case for the roundabout, as well as assessing whether it fits with Vision Zero, for example. Council officers who presented on the project at the South Area Committee meeting in March said that the cost-benefit analysis for the project should be in the public domain and committed to publish it. I followed up and last week received this reply from the Major Infrastructure Delivery Manager. She says, I've been looking back through the archives to locate a benefits realisation document or something outlining the benefits. At the time the South Cambridgeshire Cycle Improvement Initiative was being progressed, local members were keen to have the Section 106 funding spent on safer walking and cycling on Queen Edith's Way, Cherry Hinton Road and the Robin Hood Junction. And therefore the approach was to derive the benefits based on the consultations that took place and the general support received from the local residents. As such, therefore, a benefit cost ratio was not calculated, and therefore I'm unable to supply such details. This announcement is highly significant. Any support from residents was based on supposed safety benefits, but now we're told that nothing in the project archives documents any such benefits. So it seems we still do not know what the projected accident rate of the £2.35 million design is. Neither the costs nor the benefits were well defined. I would urge councillors to think very carefully before allocating further funding. It would be interesting to know how many other projects also lack cost-benefit analysis. I'd therefore like to ask, were the committee members who approved this scheme in November 2016 aware that there was no cost-benefit analysis to justify the project? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. I think it would be useful at this particular point if we could bring in officers, whether that's Graham Hughes or Andy Preston or Grant Weller. So bearing in mind we've had 4 speakers on that, wonder who would like to start. Graham, do you want to say anything to start? And then I'll bring in Grant with some of those questions.
Chairman, I think probably for the detailed points, if Andy Preston and Grant.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Andy, would you like to start, please?
Happy to, Chair. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So just to cover some of the points there, obviously Grant will be able to pick up some more of the detail, but just picking up the point there by Mr. Lawrence with regard to benefits for this project. Obviously the committee that approved this wasn't the Highways and Transport Committee, it was the former Economy and Environment Committee, which was back in 2016. And that committee report obviously outlined the basis for funding this project within the budget that was allocated for Queen Edith's Way. It outlined clearly the aspirations for significantly improving the perceived safety or safe operation of the roundabout. And members may not be aware, but from the consultation, there was a significant number of responses that outlined the concerns or safety concerns around their willingness to cycle and utilise the roundabout. And clearly that is preventing people from cycling, basically, and that's something that we're wanting to clearly promote from this project and improving the perceived safety aspects, and that's quite difficult to measure. Clearly, the ability to measure safety is on number of incidents, and there are a significant number of incidents, recorded incidents on this roundabout, but clearly there is also the aspect of perceived safety for people willing to cycle. So therefore, the strategic aspect of the benefit here is also significant, which isn't quantified in a benefit cost ratio. It is the strategic element is above and beyond the benefit cost ratio from that perspective and isn't quantifiable within a business case necessarily in terms of the economic benefits. It's a strategic benefit. Clearly, the committee made that decision at that point based on the information that was incorporated in that committee report, which was back in 2016, and that committed the project to be delivered. That was still at an early stage of its development back in 2016. It was still at the early stages of design. And as you've heard, as you've seen, the challenges here are around the design and delivery of infrastructure having some significant risks associated with them. And I think the lessons learned here are around risk management in terms of how those risks are identified at the early stages, how they are incorporated into the budget and the programme that is set at that stage, and then refined and managed as we move forward through delivery. And that's the lessons that we obviously learn here in managing those risks. And in terms of utilities, as Councillor McGurty has outlined, they are a significant risk for infrastructure projects. Even utility companies themselves do not know where their own apparatus is. The plans clearly are marked to say that these aren't necessarily accurate. And therefore it's quite a challenge to establish the impact on infrastructure projects of utility apparatus that is below ground. Now, there are things we can do to work with utility companies to scan using ground penetration radar and lots of other surveying techniques that clearly we need to be potentially making more use of. Obviously, there is a cost associated with that, which is something that is considered as part of the management of that risk. And that's something that the project teams need to closely review as the scheme develops. So the budget obviously then it was refined as the design moved forward, and as the report outlines, the estimated cost prior to commencing construction was just over £1.5 million as the design had been completed at that stage, and the further details were better understood at that point. In terms of therefore measuring the success of the project, which Dr. Gersh highlighted here, and obviously the lessons learned that I have covered. In terms of the numbers of people cycling and utilising this refined and new roundabout, clearly we want that to be as high as possible. We can measure the number of cyclists using the new roundabout, and we're hoping to see those volumes clearly increase. And we want the other schemes in this area, Robin Hood and Cherry Hinton Road, to also support that as well across the wider area, as they are obviously working together in the network. The safety record, we want to be, as the previous item on this agenda discussed, we aim to reduce that to 0. Clearly, we want, and this forms part of that approach, and obviously a significant benefit to that from preventing killed and serious injuries to those utilising the roundabout. Process improvement, Councillor McGurty obviously highlighted here, and lessons learned. Something that we are looking at across infrastructure delivery at the moment is that management of risk that I referred to in terms of what we do throughout the development of a project to closely manage the risk associated with infrastructure delivery, and those processes that we'll be putting in place to do that. And that's something that is being looked at this moment in time to establish that. And in terms of how they're allowed for within budgets at an earlier stage, so identifying the number of unknowns and uncertainties therefore needs to be reflected in the budget allowances at that early stage as well, and then refined as that project develops and move forward. And the committee and obviously the public need to also be aware of how that project is developing and moving forward, and those decisions are taken at key points in its delivery also. So that is forming part of that exercise to review how that takes place. In terms of Councillor Rosie Moore's question around funding and Cherry Hinton Road, we certainly appreciate the real urgency and importance of Cherry Hinton Road. Obviously, we've consulted on measures there, and we are certainly looking at all of the opportunities to bringing additional funding and to ensure that Cherry Hinton Road is delivered. I can assure you there is a lot of activity taking place to do that. Grant is already talking to the Greater Partnership about some of the key routes in the network that are missing at this stage, and Cherry Hinton Road is one of those. So I can assure you that we are doing all we can to identify the additional funding required to enable those to be delivered. Grant, is there anything further you'd like to add above that?
I think that just about covers everything, Andy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Just to reassure Rosie that I'm committed also to delivering that particular project. I have been down there more than once. I have been also to the Robin Hood Junction. I have discussed those. This was a few years ago with your colleagues down there. So I am certainly committed to ensuring that we can actually, if you like, get a strategic link because that's actually what we're talking about here. So members, I think it is now a matter for, we've had the speakers, we've had some input from officers. I'm now going to take some questions, and I think it starts with Ian Manning. Ian, please.
Chair, I was just going to address a couple of questions to the questions, if that's all right.
Oh, yes, sorry, apologies. Yes. Okay, please do. Ian, can I be assured that it is for clarification?
Yeah,
Please.
Absolutely.
It is clarification we needed. It's not a debate you're having.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
So just three quick ones. To Councillor McGurty, just obviously for the committee's benefit, we're hearing from two residents who are obviously critical of the scheme. I wonder if you could just talk about the amount of consultation support you've got for the scheme from local residents, just so that the committee have got a slightly more balanced view of what the local support is, if presuming there is local support. And I suppose maybe is one for an officer to comment on, but I just want clarity that what Rosie Moore is asking for us is actually to not vote for this today, and presumably the impact upon that, if Andy could comment, would be that the scheme wouldn't be finished and would continue on. So would have great concerns about that. If you could just clarify that. And then just finally to the two public speakers that they mentioned evidence a lot. I just wanted to check that they are aware of the significant body of international and particularly European evidence around the benefits of Dutch style roundabouts in terms of reducing accidents and increasing cycling in general.
Okay, thank you, Ian. So I think there is some questions. I think questions really for the people that have spoken. So over to you. Who would like to start? Mark, do you want to start? How's that, Mark? I'll apologies picking on you all, and then I'll come to you, Colin, and then I'll come to you, Colin, next. Okay. So Mark, please.
Yeah. So Councillor Manning asked about the consultation. Well, I've got the consultation document here.
Sorry, just my question.
And it says over the past 5 years, 15 accidents have occurred at this roundabout.
Okay.
14 of them involving a car and a bicycle. So the consultation was based on the safety case. So we need to be sure that there is a safety case. In terms of the body of international evidence, yes, I've spent some time looking at the body of international evidence. You'll be aware, I hope, that there are a number of different designs of Dutch roundabouts, and there are two main designs of Dutch roundabout that have cycle tracks on them. And this design that we're putting in has about 7 times as many accidents to cyclists, according to one report from the Netherlands, as the other type. So it's really questionable. We need to do the work. We just don't know at the moment whether there is going to be a benefit or not.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Colin, I think the question was local support, if I'm reading Ian's question right. He's nodding, so the answer is yes. So Colin, local support.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, in response to Mr. Lawrence Jones's reference to one online report regarding Dutch roundabout cyclists designs, he's previously submitted that evidence to you and I, Chair, and it was from a website which is run by an English national who now lives in Holland, who's decided to blog about how he knows better than the Dutch how to design Dutch roundabouts. So I think this is
Colin, can you address the question? I know all the background.
I know.
Local support, please, Colin.
In terms of local support, it's also incorrect to say that the safety case was the only one made, because in actual fact, the first public consultation on this was a general local travel survey that was carried out in 2015. There were more than 1,000 responses to that survey, Chair, and the local residents overwhelmingly supported this roundabout as their top priority for improvements locally. So I think it's fair to say that there is a great deal of local support for this. And then in 2016, the second round of consultation came forwards, and that included, and I quote, an orbital cycle lane which allows cyclists separately to traffic, and the geometry of the roundabout will be tightened to reduce space and improve visibility. And that too was strongly supported locally. So I think it's really important for us to remember, even though both of those consultations were a couple of years ago now, because of course it takes time to deliver these projects, but there is still that strong local support for the project, and also the forbearance of local people that I mentioned earlier has been fantastic during this project.
Thank you, Colin. I think the other question actually is for Andy Preston, and that's, if you like, in respect of the recommendation that B. Okay, so Andy, it's a question that I think was posed by Rosie. So over to you, please.
Ian, just before I come in, if Dr. Ghosh wanted to add anything.
Oh, apologies. Yes.
Fine.
I think that this question about local support is quite debatable, because if you go to the Facebook Fendon Road roundabout page, you will see how residents have been voicing data showing evidence about local support. And we know that 1/3 of the cyclists actually initially said the question that was asked was very ambiguous question. Do you prefer safety? Of course, all of us prefer safety. But is this the right value for our money? That is the question that I think the council should address in when you're supporting such large infrastructure projects. And I'm surprised, I know Andy mentioned about risk management. As a consultant, that's the first thing I would look at is risk register to see how projects risk is mitigated. I'm surprised we're talking about risk management at such late phase. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I think Andy did address some of that problem with those ongoing work he's already started on that particular element. So I'm now going to go from Ian. Thank you, Ian. I'm now going to go to the next speaker, which is Noel Kavanagh, please. Noel.
Sorry, Chair, can I just have an answer about my final point about if we did, if Rosie Moore was asking for the funding to not go ahead, presuming the impact would be that the project stops and remains in the state. And
that my view is clear. I don't see, we will have to approach other possible fund holders like the Greater Cambridge Partnership, and that I think is what Andy said actually.
Yeah, okay.
So, and I think I just said that I'm committed to delivering this, Ian, as well. I've been down there more than once with I think the 3 local members. Okay, Mark, etc., etc. So I think we are committed to do that. The issue I think is where does the money come from, Ian, and I hopefully. Andy address that. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. It does cover it. I mean, I would suggest that perhaps if Councillor Moore did want to have the City Council fund the shortfall, then we could suggest it. But we need to press ahead with this.
Yeah. Okay. Noel Kavanagh, please.
Okay. Right.
Can I respond since there was a question asked of me? I'll be very quick.
Be very quick, please, Rosie. You know I'm committed for. You know I'm committed to it anyway. So go on.
Chairman, before Councillor Moore speaks, can I just come in there? I'm sorry, Rosie. Chairman, can I ask if people are not speaking for them to turn off their microphones, because I'm getting a bit of feedback here. So I'm going to blame Councillor Amanda Taylor. Rosie, you're okay now. Mark, thank you very much. Grant, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Rosie. Over to you, Rosie.
I'd just like to clarify that, of course, I'm not suggesting that we should leave the Fendon Road roundabout in the state that it is. Whether it's been a good project or not, I'm not here to discuss, and it's obvious that it needs completing. The reason that I'm here is to highlight the value to residents and the priority that the work on Cherry Hinton Road has. And I really appreciate Councillor Bates and Andy Preston also agreeing that it's a priority scheme and that they will do what they can to go ahead with it.
Thank you, Rosie. I think you have my commitment actually, and to the Robin Hood Junction, by the way, which is equally part of the scheme, the overall scheme. So Noel Kavanagh.
Yeah, Ian, thanks for your commitment to the Cherry Hinton Road project, and I feel confident that it will go ahead. It's just, I just wouldn't like a gap in the development time. I am fully supportive of the Fendon roundabout. I've been involved in that right from the start. What spurred me on for supporting the Fendon Road roundabout was the success of the Radigan Road, Pern Road roundabout. Described as a Dutch style roundabout as well, but it has variations on the Fendon Road roundabout. But basic reason for bringing the Radigan Road roundabout, and as has already been mentioned, the Fendon Road one is to reduce casualties, particularly cyclists. And the Radigan Road roundabout has done that. It did have an abysmal record of accidents, but now, since the roundabout went into operating, I believe the accident rate is down to 0. I've got no objection to the money being put into the Fendon Road roundabout, but my objection is basically robbing Peter to pay Paul. Cherry Hinton Road, as Councillor Moore has pointed out, has actually been consulted on for at least 5 years now, and residents in all the surrounding streets and those who I know use Cherry Hinton Road really want the safety improvements done as soon as possible. So I urge you to, if you can't find the 304,000, well, actually, I would really urge you not to take it out of the Cherry Hinton Road funding. It doesn't seem to be making sense within the scheme where there is a kind of interdependency of these 3 schemes to improve the safety of this part of our divisions. I mean, I was just thinking, for instance, looking at where you have other overspends in the county, like the Ely bypass, for instance. You don't have an equation where you take a lump sum that jeopardizes another project, another important project, to make up for the shortfall. So it seems to be an odd way of doing the accounting within this kind of tripartite South Cambridge scheme. So I don't feel comfortable about supporting Section B because there is that project, Cherry Hinton Road, where the money is going to be taken away and, to be pessimistic, putting the project in jeopardy. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take some more questions and then ask officers to come back. Next speaker I've got is Amanda Taylor. Amanda, over to you if you unmute and thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm the County Councillor for Queen Edith's, into which all these projects come, the Fendon Roadworks and the Robin Hood Junction and the Queen Edith's Way cycle lanes and the Cherry Hinton Road walking and cycling scheme. But the schemes actually come within Queen Edith's Ward Division, Cherry Hinton Division and Romsey as well. So I'm glad that the Councillor Kavanagh has spoken on this. This project is not just a cycling scheme, it's a pedestrian scheme as well. It includes pedestrian crossings as well as improvements to the roundabout. And we've been working on this since 2010, when it was first identified that people needed safe means for children to get to school, because we have 2 primary schools, a secondary school and 6th form college within walking distance. And I think it says something about the lack of agility of the council that it has taken 10 years from the need for road safety improvements being made to a scheme that's still not quite got to completion. As your report says, the scheme was supposed to take from September last year to March this year. It's now looking likely that it will be July or August. So I requested this report to look partly at the time overrun, but also at the huge financial overspend, because we are £1 million in excess of the estimate that we had just a few years ago. And I asked for this report to look at the way that we're doing our estimating, how we're arriving at the cost estimates and how we can make improvements to those, how we can deal with the uncertainty and the lack of knowledge about the utilities that are under the ground, because at the moment we're out of control of our costs. And also to look at how costs would be reallocated, because as the report tells you, the over budgeting of this scheme is putting in jeopardy the Cherry Hinton Road cycle lanes scheme, which is badly needed for people going to school there, as well as many commuters, pedestrians and cyclists. The same applies to Queen Edith's Way, Robin Hood Junction, and I'm told from my colleagues further afield that it's even affecting schemes out as far as Fulbourn. So our failure to be able to estimate costs and time lengths is having a huge impact on the effectiveness of our cycle, pedestrian safety and road safety across the area. I have no pleasure that we've run out of money for other schemes, but I do believe that we need to improve our systems. It's not the first time that we've run over budget with schemes because of concerns about underground cabling. And we had the same thing with the Hills Road cycle lanes only a few years ago. That too was 50% over budget. And the delays are mainly due to the cabling faults. Although COVID-19 has caused some delay, we were told back in January that the scheme was not likely to finish until July. So it is really that lack of knowledge about what we have to face with the project that's causing the delays. So that's again, I thank you for the report, and I do hope that we can do something about sorting our systems out so that we have a better understanding of how long things are going to take and how much they're going to cost, because at the moment it isn't working.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Can I actually perhaps at this point, before I bring in Linda Hartford and then Ian Manning, can I reassure members that I have been discussing the issues which have been raised here by not only the speakers, but by other members in respect. I have been in discussion with Mr. Cox, the director, on this particular issue, which Angie has mentioned. It is ongoing. I am in discussions with him about the issues which have been raised here, okay, which in lots of cases is not acceptable to me or other members. So can I reassure you that I am on the case in respect of the issues which have been raised today? Linda, sorry, apologies, I'm looking for hands. So Linda Hartford, thank you.
Very much, Chairman, and I really appreciate what you've just said about your discussions with officers ongoing, and I hope nobody's going to laugh at what I'm going to say next. It may sound naive in the extreme, but I'm going to say it nonetheless. I'm going to ask, do we not have any recourse to claiming compensatory contribution to additional costs incurred when utilities companies haven't accurately advised the existence of their installations, and these are subsequently found to provide costly obstacles to construction? Now, they're going to lay claim to, well, it's all very historic and we don't necessarily have them mapped historically. Well, I'm really sorry, but the county council has had to go back over things and bring itself into the 21st century. And I would insist that utilities companies have the same obligation, and that the county council should be much more robust in claiming compensation from organisations that cause it such huge additional costs. I mean, this happens so frequently. We've already heard people talking about at least this one and one other example. What about Huntingdon Road? It happened there as well. So I really do think that this is something that we've really got to get to grips with. And having had my rant, I'm now going to say that I'm really sorry that I can't agree with Councillor Kavanagh on this occasion. I have real sympathy with Councillor Rosie Moore in her support for the Cherry Hinton scheme, but unfortunately it is true that these three schemes were allocated funding in an interdependent way, And I believe that that's one of the many lessons that we have to learn from this experience for the future. But we just simply cannot jeopardise the current situation where Fendon Road remains incomplete. But I have every faith in your commitment, Chairman, and the commitment of officers to finding that funding for Cherry Hinton Road, because I absolutely support Councillor Rosie Moore's contention that that is very much needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think one of the issues as we go forward, and I've already indicated that I'm in those discussions with the Steve Cox, is about utilities. It's not the first time that we've experienced, and it's not just confined to Cambridge, of course. We've had problems in other projects throughout the county. The one immediately came to mind actually was the Ely bypass, and it's not unknown that the utilities have no idea where their services are, and that's across the board. Okay, so I don't think, sorry, it's Ian Manning. Sorry, Ian, apologies. You're next.
Thank you, Chair. Just sort of reflecting on the discussion, I wanted to propose to the committee to add an additional recommendation D to the paper. I did notify you in advance, so I'll just read it out if that's okay, Chair.
That's fine.
Yeah, so
Please.
recommendation D would read, noting that officers are doing work on better time cost estimates in future projects, ask that a report on that work is brought back to a future meeting of this committee as soon as possible. And I'm hoping I can get a seconder for that recommendation.
Can I see who would second that? Amanda, your hand is up, so I'm assuming you're seconding that. Okay, thank you. That's been proposed as an addition. Thank you for reading it out, Ian, and it has been seconded. Under normal procedures, I think we debate the amendment, okay, because that's actually what it is, Ian. Yes. So I think I'm opening it up now, please, to members to debate what has been just proposed by Councillor Manning. Now, I know, Simon, you had your hand up. Do you wish to speak to the overall project or particularly to the amendment?
It was to the overall project, Mr. Chairman, and a very brief comment. Very much support what Linda has said, and I do think we ought to look at claiming compensation from the people who are supposed to be our partners when these sort of things happen. Thank you.
Okay, so if we can now perhaps debate, members, the amendment as proposed by Ian Manning, seconded by Councillor Taylor. So I'm looking for anybody that wishes to speak on that. Linda Hartford, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I do think there's merit in what Councillor Manning has proposed, but we've heard several times now, Chairman, you say that you're already progressing something very similar with officers, and I wonder if this is the appropriate agenda item on which to add that particular proposal. I would certainly support such a proposal in principle, but I question whether or not this is the right agenda item on which to add it. I think we would just like perhaps to hear you again say what I have heard you say already at least 2 or 3 times, that you are already requesting this type of analysis to come back from officers. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I will reiterate it again. Okay, I certainly am in discussion with Steve Cox on the issues about how we manage project management throughout the county, and I stress throughout the county. We need to take account of that. We need to be better at that, and therefore, at some point when I'm content to have seen what Mr. Cox has to say on the issue, I will be obviously bringing back something to this committee anyway. I think Graham Hughes has his hand up, and I suspect, Graham, would you like to please add to this, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Through you, I mean, I was Chairman, just going to make that point that there is a piece of work well underway that officers are working very closely with other colleagues across the county to do that, and that, as you say, Chairman, is a sort of wider ranging piece, which is going to come back to your committee. So you know, my recommendation to members is that would be a wider and more all-encompassing piece, and would be the right place for the assessment that a range of members have raised to be dealt with, and clearly it is an issue that needs to be looked at very carefully and reported to members on. So that would be my suggestion, that that's the best vehicle to do that. Chairman, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, looking at the hands now. Amanda, you wish to speak to your seconded? Please, now is your opportunity to speak.
Thank you. I very much support the amendments. As I said earlier, we need to get on top of our knowledge about the underground utilities and other things that are going to be obstacles to the schemes. It's not the first time, it's not the only place it's happened. It's happening over and over the county, and it's meaning we're not in control of our projects. I'm heartened that you are exploring this, Chairman, but you know, as I raised it back in March, and I haven't heard anything since my request in March about what we were doing about that, you will understand that it's not obvious to the rest of us that these things are happening. Wonderful that you are taking it up, but I think I would still like to second our amendment, because I think it's important that this committee makes its statement. Obviously, if you're already exploring these issues, then there should be no reason to object to the amendments. Okay, I think I'll come in at this particular point. I will not be supporting this amendment for two reasons. One is I would wish to conduct the review, which I've already mentioned now 3 or 4 times, across the whole of the county, cycling projects or other projects which involve, whether it's cycling or roundabouts. I would wish to encompass all of that review across the whole of the county council area, and obviously therefore I am not going to support the recommendation. I understand the principles, by the way, and I've kicked off the principles already, and I've already said, and I'll repeat again, something will come back to this committee in due course when that work has finished. So I will not be supporting the amendment that has been proposed and seconded, Ian. So I have no other speakers on that. Graham and Amanda, you've still got your hands up. So I think we will go to a vote on the amendment. I'll read out the names. So it's Councillor Connor. Are you for or against the amendment as proposed?
Against.
Councillor Dupre.
For.
Councillor Fuller.
Against.
Councillor Fuller. You're still unmuted, Ryan. Okay.
Chairman.
Sorry. Okay. Councillor Hartford.
Against.
Councillor Howell.
Against.
Councillor Kavanagh.
I'll abstain on that one.
Councillor King.
Against.
Councillor Manning.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
And myself against. Rob, can you please confirm the fors and against for that? Rob Sanderson. Okay,
yes,
thank
that's 3 in favour. That's 6 against and an abstention of 1.
Okay, thank you, members.
Lost. The amendment is lost.
Okay, I will now go. I think we have had a good debate. Thank you, members. I'm now going to go to the recommendations as laid out on the paper, which is A, B, and C. And I think I will again go through those individually by name as to whether you support the recommendations as laid out on the paper A, B, and C. That's to note the issues, the experience of Fenland Road project, the approval of the reallocation of the money, and to approve the construction, if you like, at the Robin Hood junction. So I will read out the names again for those in favour of those 3 recommendations. Councillor Connor.
Approve.
Councillor Dupre.
4.
Councillor Fuller,
4.
Councillor Hartford,
4.
Councillor Howell,
4.
Councillor Kavanagh,
Actually, I don't agree with B. I agree with A and C, but not B as it is, because Cherry Hinton is identified.
I understand that, Noel, but you have to cast a vote one way or the other. You have 3 choices. Which is your choice?
Right. Well, I'll abstain then.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's called democracy, Noel. Okay, Councillor King.
Support.
Councillor Manning.
Support. 4.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
And myself, 4. So, Rob, I think you have the results of that, please.
Yes, that's 9 in favour and 1 abstention.
Thank you, members, and thank you for the people that have participated in the discussion and the debate, and which has been, I think, useful for the way forward. So if we'd like to move on, please, to the next item, which is item 10, which is the finance paper. And I'm looking for Sarah Haywood to come in at that point. Yes, thank you, Sarah. Okay, would you like to introduce the report, please, Sarah?
Thank you. You've got the finance You have got the finance monitoring report as at the end of May 2020 in front of you. The bottom line for P&E is a 3.6 million overspend on revenue. The main contributing factor is the COVID-related costs, of which there are 5.2 million on the revenue side, but just to say there's also some COVID-related pressures on the capital side. So offsetting the 5.2 million of revenue COVID pressures, there's an underspend on waste, which you'll see explained, and also a one-off contractual adjustment of 1 million in relation to street lighting. So the net position is a 3.6 million overspend across P&E. The committee is being asked to consider and propose the updated capital budgets to General Purposes Committee. And so I'm going to draw your attention to Appendix 8 of the report, which is a one-off appendix, which we normally don't have, because what we've done is broken down all the capital changes since the business plan was approved. So the top section of Appendix 8 details the carry forwards from last year. And you'll recognise these underspends from last year's outturn. So it's not about changing the total scheme costs, it's just about rolling forward last year's underspend. So that's the top section. The next section details the rephasing of schemes. So again, it's not about changes to the total scheme budgets, it's just about changing the phasing over the years since the original business plan was approved. And then the third section details the new funding. That's all I was going to say. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. This is the first report that we've had at our committee. So members, you've had it, you've got the figures and you've got the breakdown of the capital and the revenue. Lorna Dupre.
Thank you, Chair. I was just unmuting myself. I just wanted to ask one question and to make one comment. The question was about the nearly 1 million in streetlight penalties. This looks to have been some kind of negotiated settlement or agreement, and I wondered whether we could be told to what extent we achieved what we wanted out of that settlement. Had we asked for a lot more than that? Were we happy? Did we feel that was a reasonable settlement in respect of the streetlights? Just some idea of that would be useful. And just a very brief comment to say once again how disappointing it is to see that we are borrowing money in order to pay off an obligation in respect of road building over 25 years. Doesn't seem to, the borrowing of money for regular expenditure like that to pay off third parties doesn't seem, we don't seem to be in a very good position on that.
Thank you, Lorna. Understood. So either Sarah, I know Richard Lumley is also with us as well, Sarah. So are you able to answer the question in respect of street lighting?
I think Graham or Richard are better placed than me to
Okay.
answer.
Graham or Richard, which one of you is going to answer the question in respect of the street lighting?
I mean, I can pick it up, Chairman. I mean, either Richard and myself would. So I think the question from Councillor Dupre was, I think you were sort of touching on what it related to and whether you think the if you like the return that we received was reasonable. It's a historic issue that dates back to the early stages of the street lighting contract, when we believe that Balfour Beatty didn't do everything, particularly in relation to sign cleaning and other similar activities that they should have done. In terms of is it reasonable? I think, I mean, Richard can confirm we did take some advice, but we received very much at the upper level of, if you like, the maximum value that we quantified the return that we would have expected. So I think it was in the order of about 90% of the maximum amount we could have secured back from Balfour Beatty. So certainly on the basis of the advice we received, it was actually a very favourable position for us, because the only alternative would have been to have pursued that issue through a dispute resolution process, which of course is potentially costly, but also has no certainty of outcome. So we felt at that level it was actually a very good position for the authority. Richard, could you just confirm there's nothing else that needs to be added to that?
Thanks, Graham. No, so just to clarify, we worked with our legal colleagues and sought advice from council on it, and it was for historical items. Graham mentioned the sign and bollard cleaning, but also a big chunk of it was to do with electrical testing of the lighting column units. And as Graham said, the advice that we received resulted actually in us not going down the dispute resolution process, and the amount that we've got back actually is extremely favourable compared to what we could have ended up with if we had gone down a more convoluted route.
Thank you and well done.
I think you find that answers totally your question, Lorna. Okay, I have no other indication of anybody wishing to speak. We have a recommendation here, which is to confirm the support for the capital budget changes, and obviously to refer to the General Purposes Committee for approval and to review and note the comments, which I think we have. Simon.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question about local highway initiatives?
You may indeed.
Yeah, thank you. I know that because of the coronavirus, we didn't set an end date for LHI applications. Have we, is that still the case, or have we closed those now?
Thank you, Simon, for the question. I think I could almost answer that myself, because you must have read my mind of last week. I have had that conversation with Richard Lumley. Richard, would you be kind enough to convey the message which I gave to you about Local Highways Initiative last week? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So at the moment, you're quite right, we haven't put in place an end date for the currently open application period. However, it is very much our intention to finalise an end date. At the moment, we're just having conversations around resource because of obviously the COVID implications, but also the focus on the active travel fund and the spend on road space reallocation, pop-up cycleways, widening footways, etc. Because essentially it's the same resource, the projects team is the same resource doing that as well as LHIs, and so we just want to make sure that we don't create a rod for our own back, and we are able to deliver everything that we want to deliver. But I hope to finalise that in the next couple of weeks, and we'll let you know.
Thank you, Simon. It was a question which I raised. As you appreciate, some of the staff have only just come back from redeployment, which obviously is causing us some, if you like it, capacity issues. But obviously, as you appreciate, that's across the county on the 90 schemes that we're doing. But we have to set, in my view, a date where we let the parishes and the towns and other councillors involved in that thing.
And I think if I could just come back on that, Mr. Chairman, very quickly. very much agree with you that we need to set a date, but we need to give parishes a reasonable amount of time to get something in if they haven't yet done so. And I also think that it would be very helpful if we could communicate with parishes and let them know what's happening, because we as county councillors haven't received any communication, and therefore I'm absolutely certain the parishes haven't either. And again, I think that that's, failing in our duty to work with them as partners.
Fully understand the point, Simon, and obviously we need some. What we've got at the moment is flexible, and people are submitting. I know some of my parishes have submitted local highways initiative projects and have put them in, but at the moment what I call they're sitting there, and the opportunity for other parishes or towns to submit them, we do need to set a date at some point or other. Okay, so thank you for your question. I think we will address the final date. I wish some flexibility under the current position that we find ourselves with, capacities with all the other projects that we're doing. I have no other questions here, so I've got nobody objecting to the recommendations at A and B, so I take those as unanimous, please. Thank you indeed. So that's fine. If we'd like to move on, please, to the item 11, which I think is an update for COVID-19. So I think that's Graham.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Bear in mind the time. I won't go through the report. I'm sure that members will have read it. All I will do is just point members to section 3. It's a general report that goes to all committees. Section 3 contains just some of the key activities that have happened in relation to COVID-19 within the remit of this committee since the last one of these reports. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I've got one hand up, which is Ian Manning. Ian.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try and do this quickly.
Okay.
I just want to echo, just want to sort of voice this concern that I've had from a number of quarters that there's more discussion happening on schemes that seem to be led by the GCP than by the county. I know there are some reasons for that, and I understand them, but I think I do have to just voice the concern and hope that that's addressed soon. Re-raise I've been given reasons for it, but the desire to have blue badge holders be able to go through bus gates. I believe there are, I understand there are technical difficulties with that, but I think they are overcomable. Yeah, so if you could just and then the final thing was just if we could have some update on where we are with enforcement of camera enforcement of cycle lanes and the associated changes in national legislation that we're all aware of.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll take the other two questions, which is Lorna Dupre.
Thank you, Chairman. I was somewhat concerned to see the point at the bottom of page 3 of this report, which tells us that traffic levels continue to increase further following the opening of all non-essential retail and are now close to 70% of pre-COVID levels. I think many of us have expressed a hope that the reduction in traffic would end more slowly than that, and that we would see fewer cars permanently back on the road. And if we're already at 70% of pre-COVID levels while so many people are still furloughed, that really isn't very good news at all. And I wondered what thoughts there were about what was actively being done to try and stem that return back to the road of so many vehicles this early on after the first wave of the pandemic.
Okay, thank you for that, Lorna. I'll take Noel Kavanagh and then ask Graham to come back. Noel? And then Noel Kavanagh.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'll just refer to 3.1, the most important part of the current report, really, and say many thanks to officers for getting Mill Road closure in place. But as officers are aware, because of the communications coming from me and my colleague Linda Jones, one element in the closure didn't happen at the time of the partial closure, and that was putting in the ANPR cameras. And unfortunately, as well, it was revealed in the safety report earlier and so on, so much of it is down to individual behaviour. And even though there is signage on both sides of Mill Road telling drivers that the road is closed, some continue to cross Mill Road Bridge, putting cyclists and pedestrians in great danger. So the question is, so that I can feed back to residents who actually are still very much in favour of the measures, which is very reassuring. We've had a lot of very unfortunate negative responses from certain individuals, but overall, the scheme is greatly supported by residents. But the one thing they're very disappointed about is the fact that the cameras aren't in place. So the question is, can we have an exact time when the ANPR cameras are in place? I think it's only going to be the cameras that will stop these irresponsible drivers crossing the bridge. And also the cameras backed up by robust signage. There is signage, but it can be greatly improved. Many thanks.
Thank you, Noel. I'll take Amanda Taylor's and then ask Graham or Richard to come back with some of the questions which relate to cameras and timing. Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to 3.1. One of the aspects of the covered sustainable travel funding that got rather missed was its support for setting up safety zones around schools, which you know, I thought was a great initiative. And I see from here that there's been 15 expressions of interests within the county. Can you tell us firstly whether expression of interests mean, yeah, I'd like to know a bit more, or whether it's, yes, please can we talk about this and see if we can go ahead with one? And also, you know, whether officers are disappointed with that figure, because 15 out of the number of schools in Cambridgeshire as a whole seems very low to me. And while I appreciate that not all schools would be able to do something like a points closure at school drop-off time, you know, it just seems a disappointing figure.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Ian and Lorna, you've still got your hands up, by the way, just okay. So Graham stroke Richard, you've got some questions, I think, about cameras and the like. So who wants to start?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll kick off. I'll probably just take a couple of those points, and then, if it's okay, Richard, to take a couple of the others. If I pick up Councillor Manning's point, you raised about the GCP consulting and suggesting that they've sort of been out there more doing that. But they certainly have been talking to local members and others. What's been going on the other schemes that the County Council are leading on is that we spent the last week or so prioritising the schemes, working out which order we're going to do them. So starting from this week, there is going to be more significant engagement. Now we know more about each of the schemes on our list, whereas the GCP just had a smaller set of schemes that they just sort of started speaking to local members and other bodies on all of those. But we will be doing the same for the schemes that we have on the county list. Now we've prioritised them and got a greater handle on their deliverability and costs. So I will say that consultation will be limited because we have to spend this money within 8 weeks. So it will be very much explaining what we plan to do and then getting on with it fairly quickly. But we absolutely understand the need to discuss with local members and others where possible. If it's okay, Councillor Manning, I'll let Richard pick up the point about blue badge holders, because I know he's been doing some work on that and on the enforcement of the cycle lanes. Just picking up Councillor Dupre's comments about traffic levels. Yes, I mean, I do agree. I mean, as you say, bearing in mind, lots of people are furloughed, lots of people who are actually still working at home, but traffic levels are quite high. I think, you know, all I can really say is it sort of means that we really need to sort of redouble our efforts on the sorts of measures that we're talking about, the active travel but also communication campaigns and so on. We need to try and make sure that public transport is a safe option, because some of those people, I think, who are driving probably previously would have been public transport users. And the government message very much is don't use public transport. Now, I know the Combined Authority is trying to put a slightly different emphasis on that, because public transport, if it's operated safely, is a useful means for people to get around. So I think there's a number of things we need to do, but I absolutely agree with you. We need to keep a very close eye on it, because with climate change and all of the other negative aspects, including safety that we talked about early on in this committee, if traffic levels climb up to where they were and above where they were before, I think that could be really a really concerning trend, that it will be very hard to get that back down again. It's quite easy for people to return to use the car. It's quite difficult to get them away from it again. So we've really got to try and avoid that as much as we can. Richard, if it's okay, if you can pick up the specific point about enforcement on Mill Road, because I know you've been leading on that. Just on the schools, Councillor Taylor, finally, and again, Richard may add to this, but we've very much taken the approach that we have put it out there to schools and said if they would like to take part. We have, as I understand it, contacted all of the schools via our education colleagues. I think it's still early days. I wouldn't want to say that the number, and it may actually have crept up since this report was written. I wouldn't want to say it's disappointing in the sense that all schools have a range of pressures, they have a range of different circumstances. I think it would be nice to see more, and I'd hope over the coming weeks we may find that more do actually come forward. So we can make sure that the communication channels are open to encourage them where it's appropriate for their local circumstances to move forward. Richard, are you okay to pick up the other points? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Graham. So in terms of Mill Road and enforcement, so the camera is being installed on the 9th, so this Thursday, and we're just finalising the road markings that will go with the camera, and hope to get those in at the same time. That the signs accompanying the camera are due to go in on the Monday the 13th. Unfortunately, we've not been able to get those any earlier. But having said that, I do think that certainly once the camera is in, as you pointed out, Councillor Kavanagh, that is going to make a huge difference to helping to enforce vehicles going over that bridge on Mill Road. In terms of Blue Badge, so this is something that is not specific to the Mill Road scheme. The current legal order that supports camera enforcement across Cambridge does not allow exemptions for Blue Badge holders. Now, part of the reason for that is that a Blue Badge is issued to an individual rather than a vehicle, and that makes it quite challenging to actually then enforce that through the automatic number plate recognition cameras. That's not to say it can't be done, and there are examples of other places around the country who have got a process in place to allow that, but it's something that we need to do more work on, and ultimately it would be a sort of a change in policy, and we'd have to come back to this committee to make a decision on that. But that's the current situation at the moment with regards to Blue Badge holders.
Okay, thank you, Graham and Richard. As I'm sure all members appreciate, this is a relatively fast-moving agenda item that we are dealing with here. So if you could convey to all your colleagues, please, that we are getting on with it, but the consultation will be very limited. Otherwise, it will just get delayed. And we have this 8 weeks, as Graham mentioned. So if you could just perhaps convey that message, we are endeavouring to deliver on the ground, and it's very important. I was very clear that we have to deliver within the 8 weeks, and that's very clear. The amount of money which can come in the second phase would benefit all of us. So I've got no other things. So we're note the progress to date in respect to this report. Nobody objecting to that, so I take that as unanimous decision. And if we could then perhaps move on to the last item, please, which I think is item 12, the highways and the agenda plan, outside bodies, etc. So, Rob.
Thank you, Chairman. Changes to the forward plan since publication include the following. We've got a number of additions to the September of the 15th meeting. They are local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, Coldham's Lane roundabout, A141 study, Cambridgeshire County Council future transport priorities, and the March study. And in addition to the December, the first meeting is Lancaster Way consultation outcome. I have no appointments to outside bodies and advisory groups to advise at the present time.
Thank you, Rob. Linda?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just quickly, I always hesitate to pile more onto our officers, but I would like us to put a date in for when that report that you alluded to earlier will come back to committee. I feel it is so important because even though it requires additional effort from officers to get the report written, I believe that its content will benefit absolutely everybody, including officers, hopefully, in the way that they work in the future. Thank you, Chairman.
Fully understand, and I think I'll take that away with Mr. Hughes and Steve Cox to give a more firm date, which I think is what you're asking for. I'm quite content to give a firm date. I want a firm date as well as everybody else. Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I wondered if it would be possible to add an update on the Wisbech Access project to the forward agenda plan, please, because I am concerned that there has been such slippage on this that having it on the agenda plan would perhaps focus minds a bit more.
Understood. I'm quite content to put something on, Simon. I think what I need to do is talk with Andy Preston about quite when that date would be in relationship to the work which is ongoing, particularly with the 3 projects that you know about. So I'm quite content to put that somewhere. I'm not too sure, talking at this precise moment, where that would fit in date-wise, but we've got plenty of forward plans on that agenda. So Andy Preston, could you please consider that and put something in for the forward plan? Can I just actually raise something? It's actually local highways initiative, which Simon mentioned. I think it was mentioned at the last meeting, and I think it's a request really for Noel, Amanda and Ian Manning. I think we need some names for people that need that will attend when those initiatives do come forward. So I'm looking for some names. I don't know whether you'd be able to provide those.
Yeah, sorry, I will do, Chair. I mean, I'm happy to be on it, but
all we need is the names. Please just submit them so that we can, the officers can actually, if you like, start to realise who those are. I don't think there's any rush, bearing in mind what Simon said earlier, because we've not set a final date yet anyway. So, but the names would be useful at some point in the not too distant future. Other than that,
Mr. Chairman, were you thinking of making any change in the membership of the LHIs for other areas as well?
None at all. I've had no request from anybody else to make any changes, so I'm not proposing that. But we do need something from the city to come out to add to that list, basically, Simon. I have had no request that I'm aware of. I don't know whether anybody else is. I don't think so. So as is, as already laid out. Okay, thank you, members. I think that's the end of the meeting. So thank you for your patience and thank you for your comments, and hope to see, well, maybe even see you at some point, rather physically see you. And a comment for Lorna Dupré. I did travel down that road, Lorna, this weekend. Okay, through your village as well, by the way. Okay.